नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो मर्धन राम नमो रावण मर्धन राम नमो कंस विमर्दन कृष्ण नमो कंस विमर्दन कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो राम नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो कृष्ण नमो विमर्दन राम नमो ताटकी मर्दन नमो कंसमर्दन कृष्ण नमो पूतन मर्दन कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो राम नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो दयाला राम नमो दीन दयाला राम नमो दीन रक्षक कृष्ण नमो दीन रक्षक कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो राम नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो राम नमो राम नमो राम नमो श्री कृष्ण नमो गुरु जय शंकर गुरु शंकर भगवत पाव शंकर गुरु शंकर गुरु जय शंकर गुरु शंकर भगवत पाद शंकर गुरु जगद्गुरो जय जगद्गुरो जगद्गुरो जय गुरु जगद्गुरो जय जगद्गुरो जगद्गुरो जय जगद्गुरो शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत पाद शंकर गुरु शंकर गुरो शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत पाद शंकर गुरु अपार महिमा गुरुनाथा कृपा सागरा गुरुनाथा अपार महिमा गुरुनाथा कृपा सागरा गुरुनाथा अनुदिनं वन्दे गुरुनाथा अनुदिनं वन्दे गुरुनाथाय अनुग्रहं सेवाय गुरुनाथा अनुदिनं वन्दे गुरुनाथाय अनुग्रहं सेवाय गुरुनाथा गुरुनाथा सद्गुरुनाथा आलड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथा गुरुनाथा सद्गुरुनाथा आलड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथा आलड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथा कैविडुवायो गुरुनाथा आलड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथाय वायो गुरुनाथा काल पीड़ितों गुरुनाथा काल पीड़ितों गुरुनाथाय कैविडुवायो गुरुनाथा काल पीड़ितों ध्यान कೈ बिडवायो गुरुनाथा गुरुनाथा सद्गुरुनाथा कालड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथा गुरुनाथा सद्गुरुनाथा कालड़ी तोन्रिय गुरुनाथा शंकर गुरो जय शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत्पाद शंकर गुरो शंकर गुरो जय शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत्पाद शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत्पाद शंकर गुरो शंकर भगवत्पाद शंकर गुरो नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करम् अनाथदीनरक्षकम् आनन्दसद्गुणाकरम् अनाथदीनरक्षकम् आनन्दसद्गुणाकरम् गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करम् योगिनां हृदन्तरे वसन्तभास्करं विभुं योगिनां हृदन्तरे वसन्तभास्करं विभुं मुदाकरं कृपाकरं सुधानन्दात्मरञ्जकं मुदाकरं कृपाकरं सुधानन्दात्मरञ्जकं गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं गणेश्वरं गजेश्वरं सुरेश्वरं महेश्वरं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करं नमामि ॐ विनायकं समस्तलोकशङ्करम् रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पंढरी रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला पुरंदर रंगा हरे विठला नरहर रंगा हरे विठला रंगा हरे विठला मुरहर रंगा हरे विठला Murahara Ranga Hare Vithala Purandara Ranga Hare Vithala Purandara Ranga Hare Vithala Pandari Ranga Hare Vithala Pandari Ranga Hare Vithala Purandara Ranga Hare Vithala Purandara Ranga Hare Vithala Hara Ranga Hare Vithala Narahara Ranga Hare Vithala Murahara Ranga Hare Vithala Murahara Ranga Hare Vithala Ranga Hare Vithala Hare Vithala Purandara Ranga Hare Vithala. Om Sahana Bhavatu Sahanau Bhunaktu Saha Viryam Karavavahai Tejasvinavadhitamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti. Together we will chant Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 1 to 10 please. Bhagavad Gita chapter 4 verses 1 to 10 chanting. Shri Bhagavanuvacha Imam Vivashvate Yogam Proktavanahamavvyayam Vivashvan Manave Praha Manurishvakave Bravit Yevam Parampara Praptam Imam Rajarshayo Viduhu Sakale Neha Mahata Yogo Nashta Parantapa Saye Vayam Mayatedhya Yoga Prokta Puratanaha Bhaktosi me Sakha Cheti Rahasyam Hetaduttamam Arjuna Uvacha Aparam Bhavato Janma Param Janma Vivashvataha Kathametadvijaniyam Tvamadau Proktavaniti Shri Bhagavanuvacha Bahuni me vyatitani Janmani tava charjuna Tanyaham veda sarvani Na tvam vetha parantapa Ajopi sannavyayatma भूतानामीश्वरोऽपि सन् प्रकृतिं त्वामधिष्ठाय सम्भवाम्यात्ममायया यदा यदा हि धर्मस्य ग्लानिर्भवति भारत अभ्युत्थानमधर्मस्य तदात्मानं सृजाम्यहम् परित्राणाय साधूनां विनाशाय च दुष्कृतां धर्म संस्थापनार्थाय संभवामि युगे युगे जन्म कर्म च मे दिव्यम् एवं यो वेत्ति तत्त्वतः त्यक्त्वा देहं पुनर्जन्म नैति मामेति सोऽर्जुन वीतरागभयक्रोधाः मन्मया मामुपाश्रिताः बहवो ज्ञानतपसा पूता मद्भावमागताः. We have been studying the chapter 3 topic, the way to overcome the impediments in the spiritual path, how to overcome the obstructions, obstacles, impediments in the spiritual path. So we covered the verse number 42, and we will have the quick recap what we covered in the previous class. We will have chanting of 42. Indriyani paranyahuhu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhihi yo buddhe paratastu saha. Indriyani paranyahuhu indriyebhyah param manaha manasastu para buddhihi yo buddhe paratastu saha. The previous class, what we covered is that the hierarchy of the what is the personality, what exactly the hierarchy. We are going to again have the quick recap. The senses, the personality, human personality, and what is the purpose of human existence he is going to cover. The senses are said to be great. So you got the physical body, which is made up of sense organs of perception, jnanendriyas, and sense organs of action, karmendriyas. There are two indriyas makes your body. So senses, the physical body, sense organs, which enable you to enjoy sensual pleasures. Your eyes see color and form, the sight seeing. All the time you enjoy sights because of the eyes. Your ears, nose, tongue, and skin also, they're all respect to objects they crave for and they enjoy. So therefore, senses are helping you. Therefore, senses are said to be great. Greater than the senses is the mind. So, whatever be the greatness of senses, if the mind is not backing the sense organs, your mind is elsewhere, your sense organs are inert, useless, they don't help you at all. So, sense organs are great, but greater than the sense organs, higher than the sense organs, is the mind, manas, which is the experiencer, feeler, the impulses where the emotions play, your emotions, your desires, your wishes and wants, your whims and fancies, the mind made up of your likes and dislikes. So your mind is said to be the great compared to the sense organs. Greater than the mind is the intellect, buddhi. Why the intellect, buddhi, is said to be great? Because the intellect has the capacity to penetrate into the areas of unknown where the mind cannot enter, access. And the second one is the intellect controls the mind. The mind is governed by the intellect, buddhi. So the thinking equipment is a special privilege bestowed to the human being alone, and rest of the living creatures are denied with this equipment called buddhi. Intellect is not provided. Therefore, you human being is the masterpiece of creation, chef, the war of creation, king of the universe is the human being. But the dignity and prestige of human being is to live up to the status of the masterpiece of creation. But unfortunately, it has been denied because of the lack of exposure of this higher knowledge. So, the intellect is superior to the mind, subtler than the mind, and more than the intellect is, he says, the greater than the intellect is he in the sense here, the supreme self, the atman is said to be the greatest, so ultimate. So this verse appears in the kathopanishad in the section 3 verses 10 to 11 and section 4 verses 7 and 8. So the hierarchy is well defined. The senses are said to be the most powerful, and because they drag the mind and the mind drags the intellect, therefore senses are first to be addressed and understood and thoroughly controlled, and more powerful than the sense organs and the sense enjoyments is the mind. So, and the most powerful than the mind is the intellect. So, the most powerful of all is the supreme self, the godhood, the godhead within you is the supreme self. In this hierarchy, in this the order, the more powerful controls the less powerful. So senses are controlled by the mind, mind is controlled by the intellect, intellect is controlled by the supreme self, the Atman. So the five senses are strong in themselves. The senses of seeing, hearing, smelling, tasting, and touching allure you, attract you to indulging in the many sense objects. So there is a push from within, there is a pull from outside world. The senses pull you only as long as you identify with your physical body. As long as your attention, your concentration, your identification is with the body, you are drawn to these sensual indulgences. It is a natural phenomenon. Wherever your focus is, that's what you get attracted to, that's what your personality is. So if, however, you shift your interest, you shift your attention and focus from the body to the mind, you become emotional. You become emotional personality, and your whole life then onwards angle of view is only emotional relationship to the world. So you will be all the time fluctuating in the realms of feelings, emotions, desires, likes and dislikes. You operate on likes and dislikes. You like it, you don't like it. So you like something, you don't like another thing. So you feel happy, sorrow, jealousy, anger, kind, positive or negative. So whole life becomes emotional personality. So you begin to indulge in emotions. You expect love and affection from everyone all the time. Who is loving me, who is too kind to me, who is generous to me, who is nice to me, who is not nice at all. So all the time you are tossed and sandwiched in the realm of emotions. Emotions govern your personality. So that is your indulgence in the identification with the mind. You will find emotional satisfaction and superior to the physical pleasures. So once you identify with the mind, you to that extent you are having less interest in indulging in physical sensual enjoyments, because your attention is shifted to the mind. Just as a person, a girl who is studying is college or school, her attention all the time, her physical body, how much she is overweight, how much she is slim and trim, what is her hair or skin complexion, all the time her attention is on the body. The moment she gets married and get a children, her mind, her interest and attention shifts to the children and family, and starts neglecting her physical body and gives importance to the mind, feelings and emotions. So she gets fluctuating, agitating. She is more interested in feeding the children, like all mothers, all family people, ladies, they are interested in all the time worried and anxious about the children and their welfare. They had a good sleep, they had a good food or not, they are all the time pestering with likes and dislikes and feeding with their emotions. If they are not happy, the mothers gets unhappy, parents get unhappy. This is the natural thing, because you have shifted from physical body to the mind. That is what happens after every married woman, generally speaking, because of their identification and association with the mind makes them at the realm of attachments and desires. So their attachments, indiscriminate attachment, leads to stress and strain, worries and anxieties and sorrow and misery. So that is the, but the mind is superior. They are not, they don't bother about their physical body at all. Therefore they go through all sorts of physical sufferings. Actually speaking, they get blood pressure, they get blood sugar, they get stress and strain, they get fatigue, they get tired, they get all sorts of headache. All these things they go through innocently, because they are identified with the emotions. Next comes, thus moving to the level of the mind, the demands of the senses no longer victimize you. So you don't care whether you have food or there, food is there or not, any physical catering is supporting is there or not, because you are happy and reveling in the emotions, demands of the emotions rather than the demands of the senses. Your mind therefore controls your body and the senses. Again, if you shift your attention from the mind identification to the intellect, buddhi, means your thoughts and ideas, ideologies. You are fired with some kind of a goal, a cause beyond your mere family and personality, to something beyond, like some company or college or some social cause. You are fired with that intellect, is fully inspired and took up that ideal goal, then you become intellectual personality. Your focus of attention is completely anchored to the intellectual level, which is superior to the senses and the mind. Living at that level of the intellect, all your emotional and sensual enjoyments lose their overpowering influence. They don't give you impact anymore. Just like any scientist, he doesn't care about the what his physical body is, what is his family, what his emotional being is. He's all the time investigating. He is all the time trying to find out and discover new objects or new vaccine or new discovery in the laboratory. Any professional of any field, it could be a doctor in the medicine, surgeon, or a lawyer or an engineer. He will be putting up a big tower or a bridge. So he is fully busy with his intellectual joy, which displaces the mental demands and physical needs. He doesn't care about their demands. So that is overtaking. So intellectual personality is superior, subtler, greater than the mind and the body. This is the hierarchy. Now the toughest job is you got to shift from this body, senses, mind, and intellect to the higher than that, which is the knowledge of the self, which is the identity of your reality. Who are you? The supreme self. The Atman is the ultimate powerful high in the hierarchy. So you grow beyond them to subtler joys, finally attuning yourself to the supreme self. The self within your entire range of desires pertaining to the body, mind, and intellect disappears. So the moment you extricate yourself, shift from the body, mind, and intellect, and identify yourself with the supreme God within you, identify with the Atman within you, then the automatically the desires, the interests pertaining to the body, mind, intellect naturally drop off. And finally, by the escalating to the self, your entire range of desires of the body, mind, intellect disappears. Then ultimately, when they completely disappear, then you reach the supreme state of human perfection, the reach the enlightened state of infinite godhood, the God consciousness, the infinite pure consciousness. You reach the supreme state of peace and bliss. That is the state of immortality, which is the mission and purpose of your existence in this world. So you, the same formula what you had identified, as you think so you become, as you identify so you become. So once you know the hierarchy, you got to understand the supreme self is the highest. So the senses are said to be the great, and greater than the senses is the mind, greater than the mind is the intellect, buddhi, greater than the intellect is the supreme God, the Atman. Where is your interest and attention? Where is your identification is the question. If you constantly attuned, constantly attached, focused on this material equipments of the body, mind, and intellect, you go through the suffering and sorrow and life and death, and you never reach perfection in life. And this is the opportunity of human life, to be utilizing fully to investigate and identify the highest and greatest in the hierarchy is the self in you, the Atman in you, then you reach the ultimate perfection. In this very lifetime, the moment you shift your interest and attention, you naturally grow higher and higher. And to the extent you shift, that much extent, the desires pertaining to the lower of the body, mind, and intellect naturally drop off, and you will be reaching the state of human perfection. This is the mantra 42nd, 42. Now we will take up 43 mantra. एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम् एवं बुद्धे परं बुद्ध्वा संस्तभ्यात्मानमात्मना जहि शत्रुं महाबाहो कामरूपं दुरासदम्. The mantra translation: thus, knowing that which is greater than the intellect, buddhi, and restraining the self, restraining the matter equipments in the self, by the self, O Mahabaho, kill the enemy in the form of desire, hard to conquer, the greatest. This is the concluding verse of the topic, actually. The final topic, concluding verse, actually. So he gives the final piece of advice. The Lord Krishna, the Swayam Narayana, gives the final tip to Arjuna. What is that? Because he is a soldier, he is a commander in chief, he is in the battlefield. So Jahi Shatrum, so kill the enemy. So he is ever ready to fight and kill the enemy. So this external quality, extroversion all the time. But the beauty of the literature, the philosophy, Krishna says, it is in the desire within you, you got to kill, not the outside person. So it is interesting. So Krishna concludes the chapter, the entire Karma Yoga chapter, with a practical approach to overcome the deadly enemy, the dreaded enemy. What is the dreaded enemy? The desire. The desire is the enemy which is destroying humanity with its, impact. The advice suggests. So what you got to do? You got to take up two disciplines, two practices. What are the two practices? First one, restraining the self by the self within. So the first one is the realizing the self within as greater than the intellect. So first you got to understand the hierarchy clearly. What is higher, what is lower. So constantly you shift your interest and attention, like when you put the foot from the higher rung of the ladder firmly, then you can release the foot from the lower rung and you will be free, because the stable in the higher rung, the stability makes you release from the lower rung of the ladder. Similarly, first thing is you got to realize the self within. The Atman is the greatest, highest than the intellect. So intellect is the buddhi. Beyond the buddhi is the Atman. Whole world, the entire world, the humanity is not aware of the hierarchy. They are all confused and confounded with the hierarchy. The senses is the first. Next to the greater than the senses is the mind. Greater than the mind is the intellect. Greater than the intellect is the supreme self, the Atman. So first practice is realizing the self within is greater than the intellect. So intellect also in the realm of the world. So you got to go beyond the world to the transcendental reality. That can be possible only when you realize that self, understand the self is the common factor which is beyond the entire changing world, the changeless entity, changeless substratum. You got to realize. The second formula, second practice is, even though you understood the self is greater, greatest, the ultimate than the all the matter layers, equipments, the hierarchy, you cannot get commensurate growth, development within your personality because of not applying yourself in the practice of restraining the self by the self. You got to restrain your personality from the world. You got to do austerity, tapas, withdrawal from the world. That is called restraining, means controlling the self by the self. You got to exercise your intellect and control the body, senses, and the mind. So, this is the two disciplines Krishna advises to overcome the dreaded enemy, desire. So, the first discipline, you acquire knowledge. You got to constantly engage yourself in filling the mind with divine knowledge, knowledge of the Supreme Self. Because the more you gain the knowledge of the self, more you get realization, the more you attune, the more you connect to the self, the more you study the self, gain the knowledge of the self, more you moving close to the self. So first discipline is acquire knowledge, constantly engage yourself knowledge, preferably in the morning 4 to 6 a.m. you got to study, because the knowledge is power. The whole world, the current problem is nobody understands the importance of knowledge. The only reason, because they don't have the basic awareness. What is that? This whole creation, the whole world right now you are engaged in, this entire world is just created because of ignorance. Your ignorance of the self alone projected this fantastic phenomena of this pluralistic world, and you are caught up. Every human being is completely caught up because of ignorance, and nobody understands that how much they are ignorant. Ignorant of what? Ignorant of their own supreme self, which is the cause for this projected of this external world. So first step is efface the ignorance, eradicate the ignorance. That is the first discipline advised by Lord Krishna himself. Gain the knowledge so that the ignorance starts receding, reducing. So it removes the ignorance. Avarna, they call it. Avarna. So we are at the moment we are clouded by this ignorance of the self. You all aware there is self and self alone. There is no other thing except Sarvam Khalvidam Brahma. Everything is Brahman and Brahman alone. There is God and God alone. Nothing else exists. Because of not understanding, not having background of this knowledge, the ignorance of the self is first setting in the human being. Just as you all aware that the backdrop of the Adi Shankaracharya's metaphor, There is a basic example to understand the phenomena of this world. There is a rope lying in the ground. You know there is a rope in the dark. There is a rope and rope alone. But a boy in the dark, he mistakes the rope for a snake. So, where did the snake coming from? How did the snake created? The snake is projected from the boy sees the snake because of he was ignorant of the rope. He doesn't have the knowledge of the rope. You know there is a rope and rope alone. But the child, the boy, he is not having the knowledge. So he sees the snake where there is a rope. How did the snake come about? The rope did not create the snake because there is no snake. But then the snake is experienced by the boy and is running towards you and says that I saw the snake, I saw the snake, I saw the snake, please save me, it going to bite me. So he is tensed up, he is panicked, he is panting, sobbing, he is crying all the time. Then you ask him, where did you see the snake? He saw the snake in the place where you kept a rope. You know there is a rope, but the child sees the snake. So the snake is a projected because the first place the snake created because of the ignorance of the rope. So child is ignorant of the rope. So once you are ignorant of the child is ignorant of the rope, that creates that projects the snake. So the rope is there. There should be something is there to understand and not understand. There is a possibility. So since there is a rope lying there, that existence of the rope created these two possibilities. First, what are the two possibilities? Understanding the rope as a rope, no issue. There is another possibility is the not understanding the rope as a rope, which is ignorance of the rope. This ignorance of the rope projects the snake. Similarly, friends, this analogy is most important for this Vedantic study. You are at this moment caught up in this fantastic world. This creation, this whole world is just an illusion, imaginary projection, a superimposition upon the Brahman, the Supreme God. But the Brahman and Brahman alone exists. The great masters all the time declaring after reaching enlightenment, you are in the Brahman, you are immortal, you are the self and self alone. But why this world, how this world came about? The ignorance of Brahman, there is, as long as Brahman exists, there is a potential possibility of understanding Brahman as Brahman, then you are reached the enlightenment. If you do not understand Brahman as Brahman, then the non-understanding of Brahman, non-apprehending of the Brahman, the Supreme God, projects the misapprehension of this fantastic world. So that ignorance, non-apprehension of Brahman is the cause for this world. So you got to get out of this world only through apprehending Brahman, understanding Brahman, gaining the knowledge of the Brahman. No other shortcut. So therefore, Lord Krishna gives this great advice to entire humanity. The first advice is to gain the knowledge of the self and reach the self. Understand the self is your ultimate purpose in this life and get to that as much as possible, gain the as much quickly as possible knowledge of the self and fill yourself. This is the first discipline because it removes the ignorance, and ignorance is cause of this creation, and this creation causes suffering and sorrow, and this birth and death and rest of the all the attachments and desires and world and body, mind, intellect, everything follows because of the ignorance. The source is ignorance. The moment you understand this, you immediately set yourself in the right direction of gaining the knowledge of the self. It removes the ignorance, which is called avarna. The second, you practice self-control, because you cannot gain knowledge being the mind is filled with desires and rashes towards the world, indulging in the world. You can't be qualified for gaining this knowledge. Therefore, the second discipline is the important, as much as important of the first discipline. Second is practice self-control. Self-control which reduces mental agitations, which is vikshepa. So avarna, which is ignorance of the self, vikshepa is the control, the lack of control, the desires. It's a mental agitations. If your mind is disturbed, the mind is worried, anxious, you cannot concentrate. Your intellect is not capable of study and reflection, and realization of the gaining the knowledge of the self is impossible. So your mind has to be peaceful. Mind cannot be peaceful when mind is full of agitations. Mind is disturbed, it cannot have peace of mind. So mind peace is gone because of the too many desires and lack of sense control, practice of sense control or self control. So you got to have to blend the both these disciplines carefully. To the extent you practice sense control, mind control, that much extent your mind becomes peaceful. Then the intellect gets ready for gaining the knowledge, and you fill the intellect with the knowledge of the self. Then you grow. It's like a two pedals of the wheel. The more the intellect is controlling the mind, it gets capable of gaining the knowledge. The more you withdraw the mind from the world through powerful intellect, self control, gaining the knowledge, abhyasa vairagya. Abhyasa vairagya is the suggestion given here, the same thing. So you will have to blend both these disciplines carefully, comfortably. You got to stretch your capacity at your level of your assessment. You can't overstep. Sense control, self control is not self denial. You are not expected to deny the senses. You got to control them, not to indiscriminately indulge and lose yourself. So without the self control, an attempt to acquire knowledge, any attempt, any possibility of practicing, gaining knowledge, it will not sustain the self. It will not sustain itself. It's like you are, example is, you are going to physical fitness, gymming, exercising, but in the night you are indulging in overeating, you are uncontrollable, no sleep, junk food, bad food, everything. Then your physical fitness has no meaning. So there must be a practice of discipline of how much you need sleep, what type of food you eat, what timetable you have, what quality of the food, everything you got to regulate, moderate and control, so that you will get the whatever practices you are doing in the gym or exercises will be productive, will be efficient. Therefore, these two pedals of the wheel, the more you withdraw from the indulgence of the world through practice of self-control, the more you get the capacity of the intellect to engage in the educating, reflecting, gaining the knowledge of the self. The more you gain the knowledge of the self, the more you get the capacity to further withdraw from the senses, from the sensual indulgence, from the mind's mental indulgence. You bring the mind, body, and keep the peace of mind and control, which will give you extra energy, extra capacity for the intellect to get more knowledge. So the more knowledge, more self control, more self control, more knowledge. These are the two pedals of the wheel for the progress towards the ultimate state of enlightenment. Is the perfection, is the advice given by Lord Krishna. Therefore, without self control, any amount of education, any amount of knowledge of the self will not have any bearing, sustenance, which cannot long last. It will just like a pot is filled with the water but has got holes below, it just drains away. You got to close the bottom and fill the water in the tank, then the tank will be filled. If the bottom is open and trying to fill the vessel, there is no meaning. Therefore, the Krishna advises the self control is an attempt to acquire the will not sustain itself. You will ultimately be drawn to sensual fields. So you will not be able to, if you don't practice self control, you will be drawn to sensual fields and materialistic field, and you will not be able to grow productively. Therefore, on the other hand, if you try to force, the one side of the story is you got to practice self control and it will help you to gain the knowledge. Another side is, if you force to practice self control beyond your capacity, it will frustrate, it will suppress, it will agitate more. You will be caricature, you will be hypocritical, you will be more disturbed. Therefore, you cannot force the self restraint without acquiring the knowledge. So it is not a mechanical military discipline. You got to improve your intellect, just like a person who is addicted to alcohol or smoking. A person is addicted to this bad habit of smoking and drinking. There is a specific places designed which are called rehabilitation centers, wherein there is a education, there is a intellectual guidance, there is a knowledge shared to the addicted person. They start interacting with them, counseling them, teaching them the consequences and the effects on the physical body and its destruction of liver and kidneys and failure and what are all the consequences. So they supply the knowledge and they make him practice little bit withdrawal of per day one packet he may be smoking. So gradually overnight he can't drop it. So there is a practice, a systematic method they design so that he will be given slowly so that they will reduce the addiction. That's why it is called rehabilitation centers. So they are designed in a technical manner, in a practical manner, how to get out of any addiction. Similarly, the same thing the Lord Krishna advising, you got to withdraw the mind to the extent you are capable of comfortably you can withdraw and stretch within the permissible comfort. So you withdraw. If you totally withdraw, you will be frustrated, you will be agitated. If you totally indulge, you will be frustrated, you will be agitated, you will be uncontrollable. So you got to find out a reasonable stretch, comfortable stretch of withdrawal and supply the knowledge to combat with that whatever gap you fill with the knowledge. The moment you fill yourself with the knowledge, it will enhances the capacity to control further, withdraw further. It is like a two pedals of the wheel. So on the other hand, if you try to force self restraint without acquiring the knowledge, you will become suppressed, repressed individual. As you gain a little piece of knowledge, you must then support it with a small measure of self-control. So small measure of self-control, small amount of knowledge. Small amount of knowledge, ability to self-control. So this is the step-by-step procedure suggested. So likewise, self-restraint must be backed by adequate knowledge of the values practiced, and acquisition of knowledge of higher helps to increase your practice of self-restraint. So this is exactly like how to get out of any addiction. The same procedure. We are all brainwashed and got caught up and lost in this world, and get to the self. How to get to the enlightenment is the same procedure. You got to withdraw the mind, withdraw the senses, withdraw yourself from the world, and supply yourself with the knowledge of the self. Then the growth starts, happening within your personality. While practice of self restraint enhances your ability to acquire more and more knowledge. Thus, knowledge and self control, knowledge and self restraint act as two pedals to the wheel. The same thing what is discussed here. Two pedals of the wheel. The press the self control, the pedal will go up, which is the gaining the knowledge. You gain the knowledge and it will go down. It will help you to practice more self control. So it will come up. So the one pedal, if you press, another pedal will come out. If you press the another pedal, this pedal will come. So more practice self-control, more knowledge will be capable of gaining more, because overnight you can't gain infinite knowledge. It's like you can't completely eat over it and within short time. You got to do little by little, step by step. So everything, the growth is gradual, the development is gradual, not sudden. Nobody can become overnight Jesus Christ. Christ cannot become overnight. So you got to diligently, intelligently understand this practice of self control and knowledge, so that you overcome this deadly enemy called the desire, which is the obstruction barrier between you and God. So thus the knowledge and self-restraint act as two pedals of the wheel to the progress in life. Together, they enable you to conquer the desire. Jahishatrum Mahabaho, Kamarupam Durasadam. It is the desire you got to conquer, not the enemy. You conquered already enemies, external enemies. You got to control internal enemy. Nobody has any clue how the internal enemy is functioning, and everybody is victim of that enemy. They believe they are free souls, they are free birds, but nobody knows that the desire controlling you rather than you control the desire. Today, no human being realizes this, understands this. So, therefore, he is clearly concluding with vehement declaration. Jahishatrum Mahabaho. Mahabaho means mighty armed. A human being, the symbolism of mighty armed means you are a man of action. You are a man of power. The human being has the capacity to choose, to design his life by himself. He wanted to be a sensualist. He can just park himself, identify himself in the senses and lose himself. He has the freedom of choice to focus on whatever parts of his personality wherever he wants. You are made up of spirit and matter. Where is your focus all the time? Where are you identifying is the question. If you are at the physical body in the matter, you will become sensualist. You will become indulgent. You lose your life. You lose the game of life. You die. Similarly, if you focus on your mind, you become emotional. And you lost yourself in the mind and attachments, desires and stress and strain, worries and anxiety, all emotional level you are soaked. If you are identified with your intellect, you just be indulgent in the thoughts and ideas of the various subjects in the world. But you have got a focus, you got the freedom of choosing the Atman, the spirit in you, the self in you, the God principle in you. You become enlightened. You get that spiritual height of perfection. So, where is your choice? The freedom of choice you are applying is the question. Here, the together they enable you to conquer the desire and reach the ultimate state of self realization, ultimate goal of self realization, God realization. Mahabaho means mighty armed. Krishna calls Arjuna by that name of Mahabaho to incite, to inspire, because he's a warrior. Warrior means fighter, he's a soldier, he is ever ready to fight. This is the nature of human being. Human being alone is ever ready to reach the self. He is ever designed to reach the self. Therefore, he is connecting to the warrior. Every human being is a warrior. What is the warrior? To get out of this matter, which is that in the form of desires and captivating you, imprisoning you. So you get out of this imprisonment and get to the freedom of true enlightenment. So the warrior to kill the greatest enemy. The enemies are varieties are there. There are normal enemies. Somebody cheats you, somebody swindles away, somebody takes your property, somebody is steals you. There are enemies of somebody attacks you externally, physical attacks or emotional attacks are dishonoring you. There are so many enemies, but the deadliest and most highest ultimate enemy is the desire. This is why it is the greatest uh, knowledge one must have to conquer it. One in a million, one in a generation is not seen a person who conquered the desire and reached the enlightenment. Therefore, he says, to kill this greatest enemy, Mahabaho, here for the fourth time, this is the fourth time he declared, kill it, kill the enemy. 4 times he repeats. Importance of the message is to understand constantly all the time the deadly enemy is seated in your heart, in your mind. You got to conquer the mind. You conquer the mind, you conquer the world, said Swami Vivekananda. So it's the mind playing tricks. You think I am free bird, I can do anything. It is nothing but just mind and mind alone controlling you. So Krishna uses the word enemy, Shatrum, for the desire. He further incites the warrior instinct in Arjuna by the challenge that this inveterate enemy of man is indeed hard to conquer. It is the toughest thing to conquer. Why it is toughest to conquer? Because you are made up of desires. You are the product of desires. So you yourself is a manifestation of desire. How can you conquer the desire? How can you get out of the desire? So therefore, it is hard to conquer. You can only conquer through this practical approach. The more knowledge of the self, more self-control withdrawal, slow and steady and gradual planning. It is like a 5 days cricket test match. If you wanted to win a test match, you need extraordinary qualities. It's not like T20. You can take the bat and you can use the bat within short span. It tests your physical body, it tests your mind, it tests your intellectual discipline, tests your entire personality to sustain for 5 days test match. Similarly, the whole life opportunity is given to human being to test for the reaching the human perfection in the form of conquering the desire, eliminating the desire, and reaching the perfection. With this, we'll conclude the chapter 3. Om Tat Sat. Idi Srimad Bhagavad Gita Upanishatsu Brahma Vidyayam Yoga Shastre Shri Krishna Arjuna Samvade Karma Yogo Nama Tritiyoodhyayah. Having concluded this chapter, we believe ourselves that we have not ended the study of this subject. We assume this, we will start the study from now onwards with the commitment that we wanted to reach the Supreme Self. With that understanding, to have that symbolic idea, we will read the first mantra of this chapter so that we will start the study of this subject from today onwards. Arjuna Uvacha Jayasi Chet Karmanasте Mata Buddhir Janardana Tat Kim Karmani Ghorenam Niyojayasi Keshava. We will take up the chapter 4 from the next class onwards. Thank you very much. Hari Om.